Go ahead.
No comments. Would you like to move on? Moving on, we are going to now take item 5, a resolution to approve permit number 949 with Space Exploration Technologies Corp. To construct and operate a research, design, and manufacturing facility. And at the podium is Marissa Katnich.
Good morning, Marissa Katnich, Director of Cargo and Industrial Real Estate. This morning, we are pleased to present a permit with SpaceX for the construction and operation of a research, design, and manufacturing facility here at the Port of Los Angeles. Their recovery operations that are currently at Berth 52 would fold into this permit as well. By way of background, the facilities will be located at the former Southwest Marine site that's at Berth 240 on Terminal Island. Initially, their site would be comprised of about 12.5 acres and could grow over time. This operation is water dependent. The spacecraft and parts are too large to transport by trucks, so they would be transported by barge or ship, necessitating that this facility is located by the water. A key component of this transaction is job creation. The operation will ramp up, but has the potential to create 130 aerospace jobs and more construction jobs, and more actual technical jobs as they take on additional property. What's exciting about this development is that it includes an adaptive reuse of the former historic Southwest Marine facilities. Despite our marketing efforts, these facilities have been vacant for over 15 years and have a history of vandalism and other issues. SpaceX plans will maximize the opportunity to revitalize and transform the site while still complying with all the rules for dealing with historic structures. The board report has substantial detail on the terms of this proposed permit. I've provided an excerpt to provide a high-level overview of the key terms. The term of the permit is 10 years plus 2 10-year options that can be exercised by SpaceX for a total potential aggregate term of 30 years. As I mentioned earlier, the premises would be comprised of about 12.5 acres with the ability to expand to an additional approximate 7 acres over the term of the permit. The initial rent is approximately $1.7 million, but it is subject to rent adjustments. One is CPI adjustments, which is standard in all of our permits, as well as the 5-year rental rate adjustment that is required per the charter. This agreement has a tenant improvement allowance for the construction of various development opportunities on the site. It's $42 million for tenant improvements, plus an additional $2 million for remediation if necessary, for an aggregate total of $44 million. Our recommendation today is that the board consider the addendum to the environmental document concerning the project. Also find that the proposed action is in the best interest of the city and also the Harbor Department. And last, approve the proposed permit with SpaceX today. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Marissa. Before we move on, I think I'd like to ask my fellow commissioners to please reserve your comments and questions until all of the speaker cards have, all the speakers have had an opportunity to express their thoughts. I'd also like to recognize and thank Councilmember Joe Buscaino for being here. Hi, Joe. Our first public comment card is from Matthew Thompson.
Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to talk this morning. First of all, I just wanted to thank everybody for the effort that has gone into developing this project to this point. We're very inspired by that property. We love the history of the property and its transportation nexus, and one of our main goals as a company is to make us an interplanetary society with a stop on Mars on the way. So we think that there's a really neat juxtaposition there. We are very interested in developing our operations there, and I think that it presents a unique opportunity for us based on the previous history of the project and obviously the water access for some of the plans that we have for the project. I will say that we're not a construction firm, so we are good at building rockets, and Our initial thoughts for this project, as you mentioned, is we want to do some rehabilitation of some of those existing structures. So we are committed to working with local labor union groups to ensure that we get the best possible talent and the best possible skills available to complete the work that we will be achieving and going after at that site. We have ambitious goals for the site, we have ambitious timetables, and we're looking forward to partnering with various organizations. Thank you.
Thank you. Ron Miller?
Good morning, Madam President, Commissioners.
Morning.
I'm Ron Miller, Executive Secretary of the LA Orange County Building and Construction Trades Council. I'm here on behalf of about 140,000 hardworking men and women in the construction trades in LA and Orange County, and about 15,000 apprentices in the LA and Orange County area, 65,000 in the state of California under joint labor management apprenticeship programs. If I could get everybody in the room with the building trades, construction, to stand up. We're happy to hear that SpaceX wants to join the Port family and use union labor on their projects. We look forward to supplying the skilled and trained craftsmen and women for their project, and that's what these men and women behind me bring to the table. We want to make every effort to make their projects a success. The building trades is fully invested with the Port of LA to do our part to make the port as competitive as possible, because we know without the port, the city would hurt drastically. So let's move on with this project and forge a good partnership with SpaceX and do our part to be good port partners. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here. Tommy Fafe.
Honorable Commissioners, my name is Tommy Favai, port staff and public that's here today. I just wanted to echo what Ron Miller mentioned. We did get a verbal agreement with SpaceX on utilizing our signatory building and construction contractors to meet the goals and give a finished product for SpaceX and the port. I just wanted to give kudos to the port staff, Michael D. Bernardo and Gene Soroka's staff for putting, going back and forth with the permit process. I know it was a hard process to go through, and then adding language in there when it comes to prevailing wage, local hire participation, and so forth. But I just wanted to mention that with the Board of Commissioners that even though this is prevailing wage, there's no enforcement behind the SpaceX projects. So, having the Bureau of Contract Administration, by adding the SpaceX projects under their listed projects, so they can actually track, the SpaceX projects through the city of LA would be a good thing. We already do it here at the port, under the port master PLA policies, through the city of LA Public Works Department and other departments as well. So I just wanted to mention to SpaceX that we're going to be watching these projects carefully, and we're going to be going out there when the construction happens, and we're going to be visiting our signatory contractors to make sure that everybody's doing the right thing here. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Rob Nadoff?
Good morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
My name is Robert Notoff, and I'm the Policy Director at the Los Angeles County Federation of Labor, where we represent 300 affiliates that account for over 800,000 proud working women and men across all industries here in LA County. And I'm here today to speak about the SpaceX project, a project that has a tremendous amount of promise and a project that could go a long way in shaping the future of the Port of Los Angeles into something that is truly out of this world. The prospect of the Port of LA building, manufacturing, and leading on a project that could reshape the future of human society is astronomical, no pun intended. This project has the potential to spur new investments at the port and revive a parcel of land that has sat dormant for 15 years. And by housing it at the Port of LA, LA workers will be at the center of it all, which is fitting because LA is a union town. And when I say LA is a union town, I mean that LA values its workers and invests in them. In LA, we know that the promise of work is a dignified job that allows workers to house a family, put food on the table, and lead a dignified life. And the only way to ensure a dignified job is through a union contract. However, I must caution that a promise does not always equate to results. For example, the previous iteration of this project had a promise of over 800 jobs, and that number has now been reduced to 130. And while page 62 of the permit goes into great lengths about prevailing wages, apprenticeship programs, and enforcement, there's still no guarantee that all contractors can comply with the standards set forth. With upwards of $44 million in rental write-offs being given to SpaceX in exchange for tenant improvements, we should, at the very least, insist that the construction jobs be done by our unionized building and construction trades. Our unionized building and construction trades are the best in the business. They have the experience needed to actually comply with the prevailing wage requirements set forth in the document. They have the experience needed to implement a quality apprenticeship program. And they have the experience to do the required record keeping that's required within the contract. And by utilizing unionized construction trades, it'll guarantee that the project is built right, built on time, and built within budget. And that, my friends, is the model of efficiency.
Thank you for your time, sir.
Thank you. Finish. Sorry. One last thing. Given that this project is being billed as a catalyst that will entice additional businesses to come to the port, it's important that we get it right out of the gate. And as this project will set the tone for all future projects, and doing it right to us means that the project is built with unionized construction trades, and that's how we truly fulfill our promise of a dignified job and build a project that's out of this world. Thank you.
Thank you. Puns aside, thank you. Frank Zambrano.
Hello, how you doing this morning? Thank you very much to the board for listening to all of us. And as you can tell, quite a few tradesmen already stood up and spoke on behalf of this project. My name is Frank Zambrano, and I represent 55,000 union carpenters here in the South Bay. And you know, we're looking forward to being able to work on this project. We're looking forward to be able to put our members to work, to be able to, just as the gentleman right before me said, hey, it's about careers. It's being able to, you know, put food on the table. It's being able to support their families. It's being able, you know, to put them through good schools. And with our apprenticeship program, you know, teaching our apprentices the right way to do things, and our journeymen on the projects, making sure that they're doing it efficiently and right. One of the things that we're committed with as the Southwest Regional Council is concerned is local hire, is making sure that we're bringing individuals on board to be able to provide them the skills that are going to be successful. You know, right here in Long Beach, right here in the South Bay, we have a large homeless situation and struggling individuals, and what's going to be able to help with this economy is putting people like that to work, giving them the tools that are going to be successful, giving them the education that's going to carry them forward with a career. We also, you know, our big pushes with making sure that we're working with our military. So we do working with helmets to hard hats, making sure that as they're transitioning from the helmets, you know, and coming back into the workforce, that we're also making sure that they're joining the apprenticeship program and making sure that they're having the same tools to be successful to transition and make sure that they're providing a good living for their families. And once the project is over, we have, you know, we represent about 3,400 members that work in the aerospace industry. And the carpenters are here to stay. We're here to be a part of this project, and you know, with the commitment for the developer and SpaceX that, hey, that we're going to use some unionized labor. Well, hey, guess what? We're going to continue to build America. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Anthony Loy.
Good morning, Port staff, Harbor Commissioners, Executive Director. We welcome SpaceX to the Port of LA, and we support our union brothers from the building and trades for their bid in the construction work. We ask that SpaceX recognize that the role that ILW would play going forward in the loading and unloading of materials, equipment, and any other associated jobs associated with that, maybe warehouse or maintenance on such equipment or clerk work. We ask that the port recognize the ILW contributions, and you guys have some discussions with us and maybe help facilitate some discussions with SpaceX for the project going forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
That concludes our speaker cards.
That concludes our speaker cards. We'll open this for discussion. I think I've been really heartened to see that we already have such a strong relationship that has been forged between the Harbor Department as landlord, between SpaceX, our local Council District 15, and all of our local trades and union members. This is a historic and, in all respects, a dilapidated and neglected site. So we were really motivated to see something beautiful and exciting and productive happen with this. Because Mr. Thompson is here, I just want to emphasize that the reason we have been able to give such favorable business terms in all respects compared to some of the other deals that we do here is with the expectation that of this board and of this department that SpaceX will be providing good prevailing wage construction jobs and permanent jobs to the site for the benefit of our local citizens, our local community. I'm really excited to see what SpaceX will be able to bring for the future of not only space exploration and technology in Los Angeles, but also to the Port of Los Angeles. Do you have a comment?
I'll reserve them, I thought. Are we going to have discussion?
Yeah, open to commissioners.
Now we're going to have discussion. Okay. Want to go first? No, I'm okay. I want to echo the comments that President Lee made. We're very excited about this project, but I've got to start with an apology. I spent a lot of time reading this. I went back and I really want to thank staff for referencing the prior discussion in April 2018 because I went and watched the entire video. And by watching the video, I was able to get the benefit of the other commissioners' comments, all of which were terrific and were really great background. And in the future, I'd suggest if staff could do that, I'm happy to watch the videos. Now, I've also got to offer apologies because after having done all that work, I left a stack of notes about that big somewhere. So let's see how good my memory is. Here's what I remembered from that discussion, and here was what I'm concerned about today, and what my questions are for either staff or Mr. Tompkins. I was quite taken by the enthusiasm that the commissioners had about how this would change San Pedro. Whether it was Commissioner Perosi talking about how wonderful it's going to be a spaceport, or whether it was the gentleman who was there from SpaceX at the time talking about how we won't have room for all the people that are going to be renting apartments and using our restaurants and so on. That was based on 700 people, 700 jobs. At some point when I'm done, I'd like to know why we're down to 130 and what that meant, okay? Secondly, I was quite taken by Commissioner Arian's comments and his concerns about the labor situation. He said at the time a prevailing wage rate is not the same as a project labor agreement. Doesn't have the same enforcement, doesn't have a lot of, there's just a lot missing. He made the comment, and all of this was very educational for me. He thought he was on the board because it was time to really move forward on the question of labor peace. That's a goal I serve. So I want to make sure SpaceX understands and listened to all the public speakers on this question of this is a labor town, this is a port that has a master project labor agreement. This is not going to be part of it. I am willing to defer to others who have the big picture, the councilman, the mayor's office, in terms of what this is going to do. But I certainly will be very unhappy if there are disputes because of the failure of SpaceX to recognize how important it is to us to have good wages and working conditions, and we want to move forward on that. So that's a question of big concern. So here's the questions I have for staff. One, I want to know what the changes in the project that we went from 700 to 130. Secondly, the expression that Commissioner Arian used, which again, I thought, you know, I knew my friend well. He used the expression, I'm not in favor of giving away property, port property. And I know Commissioner Moreno-Linares had questions about why are the rates so low and so on. Now, it could be that that's changed, and this could be a good thing. So let me ask the specific questions in terms of what my understanding is. Originally, we were talking about building an 80,000 square foot warehouse. It appears we're now talking about adaptive reuse and starting with a tent. Now, that is not to say that we won't eventually reach that warehouse. But what my specific question is the jobs is one thing. The other is the rent credits, because I kind of rounded this off, and it looked like, and again, let me see how well I remember my notes, if the rent was going to be $1,699,999 annually, I called it 1.7. If you look at it over 20 years, I mean, that's, you know, that's a number that's close to 40 million. We talked about, but it doesn't take into account CPI. And we know that over 20 years compounded, that means a lot more rent's going to be paid. Then we talked about a tenant improvement credit of 42 million, dependent on receipts being presented. So obviously, if we're not building an 80,000 square foot warehouse, there's going to be less construction costs, less tenant improvement credits, more rent to the port. Do I understand that correctly? And are there new numbers, or are we still talking about $42 million?
Okay, I think there were 3 questions, so I'm going to cover them in order.
Okay.
The first question on jobs, the number that we provided in the board report is aerospace jobs. It's not, doesn't include construction jobs. The prior report covered both. Because SpaceX hasn't completed their construction plan yet, because there is some variability in what they're going to construct, they do not have those numbers quite yet. I can invite them up after I have a chance to answer the other questions, but we don't have those numbers yet. So it's 130 plus.
So
and we don't have that final number yet.
Good, let me stop you there. So it's 130 engineering jobs, and the difference between 700 and 130, which would be 570, would be construction jobs, and that number may be going down because the scope of the project may have changed.
We don't have the number yet.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Okay, with respect to the rent credits, the number hasn't changed. It's still 42 million, but it's spend to get. So they only receive credits on what they spend, and they only get credits on improvements they make to the real property. So let's say they bring in equipment, that's not covered by a tenant credit. So the value that accrues to the port at the end of the lease term is the value of the improvements at the end of the term, and there will still be value. So we will have something that we could turn around and rent to somebody else.
Okay, let's stop right there. Originally, we talked about this 80,000 square foot warehouse, a building. Now we're talking about adaptive reuse, okay? Whatever improvements are made to the existing buildings will remain.
Yes, correct.
Let's talk about this tent, because it appears there's some urgency on the part of SpaceX to get going quickly, and that's why they've switched to this concept of a tent rather than waiting to put up the building. Is the tent going to be a permanent structure?
We're reviewing the scope of that to ensure that it's a permanent structure. They've submitted their plans and we're still reviewing it. It would need to be a permanent improvement to the real property. That's how the agreement's written.
And it would have to be a permanent improvement to real property to qualify for a tenant improvement credit.
That's correct.
If they choose to do that, that's fine, but it doesn't get deducted from the rent the port's owned.
Correct.
Got it. Okay. And
Okay.
you were still had another issue?
No, I think that was it. You had a question about the rent. That hasn't changed. It's the only thing that changed from the rent from the previous board report is under the previous board report, they didn't plan on renting those 2 structures. And now since we added that, the rent has gone up because of the addition of those 2 structures.
Got it. Is this permit for berth 52 folded into this?
That's correct.
So we no longer will be getting rent for berth 52, nor will SpaceX be using it?
Correct.
And just out of curiosity, at berth 52, what exactly was it that was offloaded?
It was recovery operations.
And that was recovery of space,
Yes, the satellites, when they'd go out and recover them, and then they'd bring them to the berth.
okay? And was there anything involving loading and unloading barges?
The satellites that they
Okay.
recovered.
Perhaps Mr. Soroka could address this then, because my memory's long enough that even though I don't remember viewing it, I remember hearing stories of cargo like camels coming in and camel hides, and the ILWU was able to unload that. So I presume they would be capable of unloading satellites. And the question is whether the recovery operation was ILWU labor in the past. And if not, why not? And what's that covered by?
If I can answer that, this is Mike DiBernardo. So that was the rocket recovery. So when they launched a rocket, either from Vandenberg or from another location, they would recover the rocket as it came back down onto a barge. And that barge that's docked at 52 went out to go recover that spacecraft. So it came back as a stand-up rocket, if you may have seen some pictures of those coming back. And then SpaceX had their people do the handling of that rocket because it was specialized.
Okay. Next question then, and we're close to the end. Remediation. We got a new handout today. I don't know if things were changed from what was in our board packet or the board report.
Nothing changed in the board report.
Okay. Then this question of remediation, we know that the rental offset that originally was talked about was 42 million.
Correct.
Plus 2.1 million for remediation, up to.
Up to.
Okay? Now, on page 4 of the board report, it says that the allowance provides a further contingency for additional environmental contamination that is beyond 5% of the total construction costs. Let me see if I understand that. So on the total construction costs, SpaceX absorbs up to 5.1%. The port's not liable, is that correct?
This is intended to cover unanticipated contamination, because all construction plans will take that into account, but this is unanticipated contamination given the history of the site. So if the 5% would be covered in the other bucket of funds.
Okay, who pays the first 5% of remediation?
It's covered by the tenant improvement allowance.
It's covered by the tenant improvement allowance.
Correct.
So that means SpaceX pays it, they get a rent.
And they'll receive a rent credit, correct?
Okay, so this is meant to say that if it goes above 5%, the port then is liable?
If it goes so there's 2 buckets of money. The
Okay.
first is the 42 million, and that takes into account some potential remediation. If it goes above what that estimate was, it goes to the other bucket of funds, which is the 2.1 million. So it's essentially a contingency in case they encounter anything they didn't expect.
Okay, who's paying it?
They pay it, and then they receive, it's offset by a rent credit.
Okay, let me ask as directly as I can then. Is the port liable for any remediation costs if it should turn out to be 15 million?
Well, the way the agreement is written, there's a provision that we added that says that if it goes above that amount that we've projected, that we'd come back to the board.
Okay, so we're not agreeing to anything right now?
We're not.
Okay. And again, do you have new numbers? Because it looked to me like we actually wouldn't be, if we use the 44 million figure, it looks like we actually will not be collecting cash dollar rents for 20 years.
If they spend the full tenant improvement allowance based on our projection, this wouldn't see a positive cash flow until year 18.
Okay.
But it is spend to get, so they don't receive the credit unless they provide the receipts that they spent the money.
Again, I share the enthusiasm the other commissioners already expressed about what this is going to mean, and I defer to the large picture that presumably the councilman and the mayor have in terms of what this will do for the city. I share the concerns that were expressed at the last board meeting about the tenant improvement questions. And I can only say to SpaceX that we look forward to you being good neighbors and good tenants, and hopefully it'll help change our town. And many, many thanks to staff at every level for the spectacular job done putting this together on such a rush basis. It was really exceptional. Thank you.
Commissioner Prosy?
Yeah, I got a couple comments. For the first question, just for clarification. This is going to consolidate their SpaceX's operation?
Correct.
From rocket recovery to this site?
Yes, it'll all be
Correct.
located in one location.
Okay. So first off, I want to, I'm glad you went and saw the video. I think it was important because we went through a lot of this conversation back then. And the thing that's most exciting, first of all, I'm glad to see laborers here. I have firsthand knowledge of working with the Carpenters Union where I work, a very great skilled workforce. It's great to work with them, so it's good to see everybody in the room and aligned on moving this project forward. I think what's important is, and I think it's been brought up here by many people, is the importance of the big picture here. We were excited last time, and then, you guys all left and they had other plans. Now you're back. We're excited to have you back, okay? Whether it was 700 employees or 130, we believe there's a future for growth there in this industry. We're also excited about what's going to be the after effect of your presence through the public market, through housing, especially for jobs for our kids. We've long looked at how do we diversify the jobs at this port. This brings another element to that for the future. When we talk about technology and advancements, we went through a lot of discussion about where the future is for technology of moving cargo, and we still have a lot of work to do there for our other ILWU workforce and others that have to get ready for the future technology here. That's another big push for us. This just brings another element, another dimension to where we're trying to take this port. And so we're excited about that. And I will say again, being a spaceport, which I was excited to bring up that phrase when this first came about, our final frontier is space. And where we're all trying to go as a nation is so critical to the future of humanity. It's great to see that this effort's moving forward, along with all the other aerospace companies that are trying to get to the moon and beyond. So I'm supportive of this project. I'm glad that we have, union representation here and being part of this future. So I'm very supportive. So thank you very much for coming back and for what the future holds.
Commissioner Moreno-Linares.
I'd just like to echo what everybody said, but especially going back to what President Lee said. The port, which encompasses everybody who works here and everybody sitting up here and all our partners, bending over backwards, contortionist practically, to make this happen. And so this is the second round. Councilman, I hope that as we are working together here that everybody delivers on their promises, because we are certainly on the record. As you can see, you can go back years and see on the record, and there's no number of people willing to stand here and tell us what we have agreed to do. And I just expect the same from those that are standing in front of us. So thank you. Looking forward to that happening.
Thank you.
Yeah, Commissioner Morosi.
Yeah, I forgot also to mention thank yous, right? I want to thank Mayor Garcetti. I want to thank our councilman, Joe Buscaino, Mike D., Gene, and the staff, labor. Because again, this is a big picture thing, so I forgot to say thank you to everybody who's been involved for the late night calls, the early morning meetings and breakfasts, you name it. So again, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Middleton.
The other commissioners reminded me of one other point that Commissioner Arian had made, and that is he had inquiries for SpaceX on the technology jobs. And he said, where is the training going to happen? And the answer was kind of loose last time about on-the-job training and bringing people in. And Commissioner Arian mentioned our Workforce Training Center and how we have to look beyond the actual jobs that are the jurisdiction of the LWU if we're really going to talk about training the force, the workforce, that will not be fortunate enough to get longshore aid registration. And technology is one area that's possible. So we are again hoping, it isn't part of this agreement, but we're hoping that SpaceX will be open to meeting with the very fine workforce training department that we have and the campus that we'd like to build at the port to hopefully develop those jobs. And I'm very mindful of the trades, and I had the opportunity to tour the IBEW facility. I've talked a lot with the carpenters. In terms of all the training facilities, nothing is going to displace. Our Workforce Training Center will not displace any of that, but this is new work. So I hope those discussions will be ongoing, and if there's any comments that could be made, I just think we got to grab every opportunity that we're seeing this as a job creator. And that's what we're going to be looking at. I know that that's Commissioner Perossi's area, so he's real excited about the spaceport. I'm excited about jobs, and that's what I want to see happen. Thank you.
Yeah, Commissioner Middleton, that is one of many reasons why we started under Aveen Sharma's leadership, the Labor Collaborative. We have some ideas, but our friends in labor and the business community, our commissioners, our city officials also have many more ideas. And we'll be exploring all that through this particular vehicle and many others.
Thank you.
By the way, just for clarification, I too am excited about the jobs.
I know you are.
Okay. All right.
We're all excited.
All right, thanks.
Thank you, commissioners, for your comments. If there are no other questions for staff, may I please entertain a motion to approve staff's recommendation?
So moved.
And a second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? That motion carries. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for coming out and expressing your comments and thoughts to us today. Always great to see you all.